Hi, I'm Patty Conley, and I'm here with Jane Brown, and we are two of the authors of the upcoming book, West Danville, Vermont, Then and Now, 1791 to 2021. And we're really excited about the book. We have a lot of wonderful images, and we're going to talk a little bit about a few of the images today.
Here's the West Danville village in early 1900s. And there's a stone shed with the grout pile going down through actually dumping into the brook on the right. You can see that. And Hastings Store is at the far left, the larger building across the brook. And right in the foreground is the sawmill.
This particular photo is the Stevenson stone shed, which was also located along the beach where the beach area is now in West Danville. You can see a railroad car to the left of the picture. A lot of the pieces of granite were transported by rail car. And this particular photograph was shared with the Historical Society by Reg and Claire Seveny. Reg grew up in West Danville Village and was very familiar with what was going on in there in the day.
And that is the mill pond. The mill that we just saw in the first picture is down in the background, and the bridge that went across and was later on removed, and the mill pond would be about where the open water is, just below the present bridge, the modern day bridge. But various farmers would haul their logs onto the ice in the wintertime, and then in the spring they would work those booms down the pond and into the all three ponds. Most of the lumber came out of the first pond, around the edges of the first pond, because it was all farmland around the pond at that time. And then these logs were released and went down the sluice way into the mill. And it was a booming business at the time.
This is Van A. D. Blake, who was one of the early mail carriers in West Danville Village. It looks here like he's getting ready to strike out on his mail route. This picture was taken sometime in the early 1900s, and Van A. actually made his wagon that the horse is pulling that he used to deliver the mail.
And that is the school. It was actually a new school that replaced a one-room school. And it was on the Route 2 side of the pond, and they moved it in 1929 down the road that you can see in the foreground, across the bridge, and then up Route 15, and it became, it was used as a school there for a good many years, and eventually became Larrabee's Lumber Supply. The building is still there, and it's Armstrong Masonry now. And on the right side, you can see a small building sitting out into the water, and that was the boathouse for the steamer that they used to carry passengers around the pond, and it went about every 2 hours. It would go around the pond, and people could pick it up and at various spots and ride and get off wherever they wanted to. And the railroad track is just behind that. So Route 15 would be on the opposite side of the railroad track, then the railroad track, and then the pond. Oh, that's Point Comfort.
This is Point Comfort Pavilion.
Yeah.
In the very early days.
And you can see there were gas pumps there. It was quite a different spot at the time. It had a restaurant and the filling station, and the pavilion was out in the back of it, and then cabins also. I'm not sure. I think probably that was before McLaughlin owned it. but the book tells the whole history of that area.
And this is a picture of Sim Whittier on his island. The little island, which is still there, and one of the buildings is still in existence there. And the island is now owned by members of the Pearl family. You can see the buildup of stones in front to help keep the water level from coming up onto the island and causing damage.
Since then, the water level has raised considerably, and that's covered in the book too. That is the original bridge across which that schoolhouse came. You can see Hastings Store, where it is, right across the brook, and that was a very sharp turn, and that's why they decided to change the location of Route 2. The road to Danville would be on the right, and going to the left from crossing the bridge, you would go up what is now Route 15. That was a dangerous bridge. Oh, there's another bridge.
This was the infamous Pumpkin Hill Trestle that was built at the time the railroad came from St. Johns Ferry to Danville. It was one of the longest trestles on the road. It was not the highest. That one was in Walden, but this was certainly the longest. And one can only imagine why the railroad crew was a little nervous going across this skeleton-like structure. It didn't look like it was terribly sturdy, which is why in the late 1800s, I believe around 1889, that whole structure was filled in. Italian workers came and they spent many hours wheeling loads of dirt to fill in that structure on the trestle.
That's about where the Joe's Pond Association Pavilion is today. It was a celebration, and I think it was a field day of some sort that the state of Vermont put on, and some 200 people, as I recall, were there. This would have been in the later 1900s. You can see the cars there, and they had a tent up, which wasn't usual. By then, the pavilion had apparently been gone that Flint built, but the Joe's Pond Association Pavilion had not been built. So it would be before the 1920s. And I think that was a hatch picture, was it not?
It was.
Yes.
This particular picture was taken by a professional photographer by the name of Fritz Henley, and it shows Gilbert Hastings, who was Jane Hastings Larrabee's grandfather, who originally owned Hastings Store. He and his wife Jenny. He's talking on the telephone, probably taking a grocery order. We had express permission to use these wonderful photographs in the book that were taken, again, by this professional photographer, Fritz Henley.
That would have been about the 1940s?
Probably, yeah. And this is the original power plant building that was built in about 1917. And it doesn't look quite the same as it did then, but this was the original brick building that was Eastern Vermont Utilities before it was bought eventually by Green Mountain Power. This is another Fritz Henry photograph. I believe one of the individuals in this picture is Guy Davenport.
He's the one at the far left.
Who grew up in West Danville. And they're checking out some of the stock in Hastings Store. And
they're also checking out the air raid instructions, that big sheet that is in front of the the maple syrup cans is instructions of what to do in case of an air raid. That was during World War II. Oh, that is a still that was in Cabot, actually, and just above Joe's Pond. It was very active during Prohibition, and we do have a full chapter on Prohibition. And this was on my grandfather Bolton's land, and he protested it very greatly when he found out that it was there. And I've looked for it, but I never was able to find it. But that's a picture that came from my collection.
And this is a picture of an early steam locomotive making its way through West Danville Village in front of the pond. This would have been taken probably in the late early 1900s. It was a photograph that was part of Dot Larrabee's personal collection. You can see the engine in front of the locomotive, which is a snowplow.
It's been fun watching these pictures, Patty. I'm excited about it. There are so many more pictures just like it in there. It's been really fun watching these and visiting with you today. So I want to thank you.
Yes,
and I hope
you,
everybody
Jane.
will pick up a copy of the book. I think you'll like it.